Hello friends! This doll came together a little differently than my usual dolls. I'll talk about it a little later in the video, but for now I'll just say that she's kind of a model for some of my 3D work and my clothes patterns. Before we get into the process, I just wanted to say a big thanks to my patrons who helped me with ideas during this project and for always supporting me in my work. Thank you so much. If you enjoyed the video, please like, comment and subscribe. It really does help me out in the algorithm, but it also helps YouTube know the kind of content to recommend to you as well. So let's get started. I made a video tutorial of how to add the fuller bust pieces that I sell on my Etsy. My patrons thought I should give her a full repaint, and I agree. From here I prepped her as usual. I shaved her head, heated the vinyl of her head, pulled her head off, scraped the glue plugs from inside her head, took all the gunk from inside her head, and finally wiped off her factory face paint. I wish prep really was this fast. For some reason this doll's head's a little bit wonky, don't know why, hopefully the hair will cover it. Now about her dress. I'm using the same dress pattern that I used for my unicorn. It was inspired by the strawberry dress that was viral about 3 years ago, but I really wanted to make one with actual strawberries on, so I'm using red glitter HTV and green foil HTV to add those strawberries. This pattern's really flexible. I didn't need to change it at all to accommodate her fuller bust, and this was something that I was hoping to show. The dress was intended to be a tutorial, but it was so much harder to sew it with the HTV already added. I got a little bit filmed, so here's the footage for that before I rage quit and just sewed off screen. This pattern is available on my Etsy, which is linked below, or you can get it for free if you're a $5 and above tier patron. I also add patterns there that I can't sell for whatever reason. This pattern is a little bit trickier than my other ones because you have to make some decisions on your own, but for that reason it is pretty flexible. I love how this dress turned out. The head got 3 coats of Mr. Super Clear, waiting 30 minutes between each layer for it to dry properly. I've done a couple of similar Frankies in the past. This wasn't a conscious choice at the beginning. I'd made the dress and then I used just a Frankie that was lying around on my desk to make that video of how to add the 3D fuller bust piece. Thank you to everybody who's ordered so far, I appreciate it so much. I can't wait to see what you decide to make with these massive boobies. I love the contrast between Frankie's mint green skin with a pale pink. I think it's just beautiful, and it's a colour combination that I've used in the past. I thought it would be interesting as well to see how my style or my skill have changed over the years. I have another 2 Frankies at least with a similar colour scheme, so I want to have a look at them side by side later. I was hoping to be able to use this face up to talk a little bit more about my process, but there was a lot of it that I had my hands in the way of. I think I must have been in quite a bit of pain with my hands at the time, so I was holding my pencils in a different way than I often do. I'd actually also lost all of my brushes and about 5 pan pastels. Like the brushes I'll take the hit on, I tend to buy quite cheap ones, but pan pastels cost a fortune. I found them in the end next to my bin, like on the floor, so they'd very, very nearly gone in my bin, but not quite. So please forgive me on wandering out of frame on this as well. Just apparently was really into doing the doll, which I'm super happy about. I did another face up alongside this one, another face up that I had promised a few years ago. I can't wait to show you all. I've already shared her on my Patreon. If you ever want to see what I'm working on in advance, then Patreon's the way to go. I'm sharing quite a lot there. I've really been enjoying doing dolls again, and I know I took a really long time off, but it really was what I needed to kind of get back to the passion. I wanted to add some more textural elements to her skin, so here I'm adding some veins, and I'm holding the pencil in this strange way so that I'm applying the least amount of pressure I can. I have I've been working on eyebrows since I started doing dolls. It's still something that I'm not super happy with. And rather than blushing in the middle of her forehead, I blushed at the head of each eyebrow this time. It was something that I'd seen on some examples of Stow dolls. I have a couple of Stow dolls that I need to repaint. They're super cool, give them a Google. And the face-ups on them are absolutely adorable. There was another blushing element I decided to add to this doll that I haven't really done before as well, and that was blushing around her hairline. I saw Lacey Scanlon on Instagram, I'll link her below, doing this on one of her Frankies, and it looked so cute, so I wanted to try it. I've had questions in the past about how I get my eyes so lifelike. I genuinely can't assess my own work, so I don't know if they're lifelike personally, but I was thinking about doing a little series on my Patreon of how I do my face-ups and like working very hard to make sure my hands aren't completely in the way the whole time I do it. This paintbrush, the silver-handled one that I'm using, I bought by accident in a model shop in Japan, and I must have paid a fortune for it, because when I've looked for it online, it's about $20, which is wild, and it's still like got an amazing tip on it. It hasn't hooked or anything, so it's what I always use for brows and eyelashes. I'm not sure what I'm going to do when I need to replace it. You see me using a pin on the doll's face in a moment. This isn't to kind of scratch into the doll, this is because I'd got a mark on her and it's an easy way to take that off. I went over some of those veins again. I was thinking actually with the veins, so with a lot of dolls we see kind of what we might normally call as faults. So like veining or splotchy skin tones, but they're only faults for white people. We never see this for people of colour. I'm wanting to do more dolls based on people of colour, just because I think representation is so important, and I know I have people from all over the world watching my creations, and I want them to feel represented in my art. And so I was thinking I wouldn't add like blue veins necessarily on a person of colour, because I've never seen that on any of my friends who are people of colour. Do you know what I mean? I know that sometimes people with darker skin tones have issues with uneven skin tone, but I've never seen that represented on a doll other than vitiligo, and I've seen that on Caucasian inspired dolls as well. So yeah, not really sure. Let me know any artists that you've seen that have done POC dolls. I'd be really interested in that approach. I think I was planning on doing her eyes just pink to begin with, but I decided to add the yellow. This is something I've done in a Frankie before. I realised my Decora doll had not dissimilar eyes to this. I liked how my eyelashes turned out on this one. I highlighted them, which I don't always do, but because it was such a thin line, it did really make a difference in defining those eyelashes and making them look separate from the eye line. I like how her lips turned out as well. They're a little bit different to the bitten look that I usually do, and they've turned out quite full and doll-like. Funny old thing. For texture as well, I wanted to add her freckles. On reflection, I think I should have used a desaturated green tone rather than this brighter green tone. I don't dislike how she turned out, but it wasn't my aim. So I think with these freckles, she kind of ends up looking a bit like a frog. And then as I was doing her, I was like, oh my gosh, if Ivysaur was a cute girl, would this be what Ivysaur would look like? I think her name has to be Ivy, doesn't it? Or is she nearly a poison ivy, like from the Batman series? So to do these, I'm using gouache, and I'm adding like big wet splotches and then taking off the water with a dry paintbrush. So this tends to leave like the ring mark around the edge of the shape that you've added, with like texture in each freckle. I actually did this a few times and I wiped it off and started again a couple of times. Just make sure you've sealed properly with Mr. Super Clear and then this isn't an issue. Straight out of frame again, sorry about this. It's something that I do when I'm absorbed into the doll, so like watching it back, I'm not unhappy that I've wandered out of frame, but I know it's difficult to see. It is just proof of my enjoyment. I decided to do some white freckles on top, so I'm doing exactly the same, but with a very pale colour with white added in. You'll have to let me know what you think about this skin texture, whether it's something you like or not, or the placement if you think that should change, something like that. Please let me know. I enjoy projects like this where I don't have a really solid idea of what I want to do because I enjoy the flexibility. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do for her hair. I was thinking about using that purple, but it just didn't work with the dress. So I decided to give her this deep red. It went a little more cherry coloured when it was ironed. So this is how I pull my yarn out. I find this a lot easier on your hands than doing the one where you cut little bits and then brush them out. So I start with a mound of hair and then off screen, I'm so sorry, I iron the hair flat to get the silky texture. I'm painting her scalp with red. I didn't have magenta, so I couldn't quite get the same colour as the yarn, but it worked out fine in the end. I decided I wanted to have a really short pixie cut. So I drew in kind of the line where the fullness of her hair would be, and I rooted kind of the top part. I'm gluing that with PVA glue. And because I don't want to crunch her head around, I'm using a paintbrush. I've not had any issues with rooting after doing the face up so far. This is what I've been doing after my break. I'm making flocking powder by trimming some yarn really, really tiny. I do prefer commercial flocking powder, but it would be hit and miss whether I could get exactly the right colour. I'm painting sections of kind of the undercut with PVA glue, and then I'm packing on that flocking powder. That's tricky. Packing on that flocking powder. Once that was dry, I brushed off the excess and did another coat, just straight on top of the first round of flocking powder. And then brushing off the excess again. Make sure to wait until it's properly dry. I'm going to lose a bit of fibre when I'm brushing through, but this isn't an issue for me. I massively over-root whenever I do it. Something that I really need to work on. This hairstyle took about 4 hours to cut. I was really nervous about doing it. Also, please don't use a razor blade like this. Do as I say, not as I do. You can see a new scar on my hands that I had covered up for a couple of videos ago from an argument with a Dremel. To learn how to cut this pixie cut, I went on YouTube, I looked on some step-by-step tutorials and then kind of made it work on doll scale. So first I'm wetting down the bits that I want to cut for the lower part, and then using my razor. I use tiny little scissors as well to cut into those. I sectioned out the top part to cut as well, and this I mostly used the razor. I didn't need to use the tiny scissors very much for the top part. I find it really useful to look at hairdressing tutorials when cutting doll's hair. I was talking to my human hairdresser about dolls and said that I try and pay attention while I'm in the salon or ask questions about styling and stuff, because it is very similar to human styling. The top part of her hair I did quite long. I wanted her to have quite a good quiff. I'm using my hairdryer and just water to try and get that hairstyle where I want it to be. After this, I'm using semi-gloss varnish to gloss her lips. I find this gives a quite natural look rather than a high super gloss. I had the intention of 3D printing her shoes, but my skill level isn't where it needs to be yet. I found these in my stash and thought they would look super cute with the dress. I trimmed away the ribbons that are moulded. Please be careful, do not use a razor blade like this. And sanded flat some of that sculpt as well. I took the paint off using acetone, and then I'm going to paint these shoes in kind of tones of brown. I'm starting with a mid-brown all over the shoe, and I do 2 coats of that on both shoes. I'm then taking a deeper brown colour and really watering it down. I added a little bit of washing up liquid. This helps break the surface tension and means that it acts more like a wash. So I'm painting that on, but then taking it back off as well, which means it'll leave a little bit in the depressions on the shoe. I'm going back in and doing that a little bit more accurately. Again, watered down paint with a tiny bit of washing up liquid. And then dabbing off any excess. I painted the soles in a deeper brown. Did some edge highlights that I'm going to dab off with my finger as well. I saw Blurred Colours Art doing something similar and thought it was genius. And then I'm going back into the mid-tone and adding a little bit more of that mid-tone on top. I'm also using quite broad highlights here that's very slightly lighter than the original brown that I painted in on the toe and a little bit on the sides of the shoe. I painted the eyelets in gold. I've also painted the shoelaces in a similar colour to a thread I'll be using later. She got a gel mani in peach. And I'm using top coat to go over those eyelets to make them super shiny. I'd sprayed the shoes with Mr. Super Clear as a sealant before this. Using a needle and 3 threads of embroidery floss, I'm adding kind of the top of the laces so that I can tie them in a bow and make them look more realistic. I'm super happy with how these turned out. I think they look super cute. I want to own them. I was talking to my patrons about any accessories that she needed, and my patron said like a harness to show off her boobaloobies. I couldn't quite find the fake leather that I wanted for a harness or my doll scale buckles, so I decided to create her these tiny little stays in a pearlescent white. I think it adds to that cottagecore vibe. The strawberry dress always comes up in cottagecore searches. I'm not really sure why. To me, it doesn't shout cottagecore. I love it, and I love cottagecore, as everybody knows, but they don't necessarily fit to my mind. I crisscross sewed up the front of the stays with the same thread that I used for her shoes. On the front, I trimmed down the threads. This is not something that I intend to be a working closure, but on the back I left a lot of length in the thread so that you can loosen it and take it on and off the doll. What do you think to her tiny little stays? I'm super happy with how they turned out. Now it's time to put her together. I should have done her hairstyle while the head was on the doll. I know this, it's something I still forget. I'm putting her head in some Ziploc bags too, because I've had a leakage before, and then warming the neck hole with some boiling water. I'm cutting down the neck peg to make it easier to get the doll's head back on. And after a couple of minutes, that vinyl is soft enough for me to try and get it back onto the doll. The design wasn't looking finished to me. Her shoes just looked totally separate, so I decided to make some frilly little socks that I was hoping would soften the look of the shoes and make them look a bit more intentional. I much prefer the look with the socks. And she's done. So what do you think? I absolutely love her. She's supposed to be a model for all of my big booby dresses, but I don't know if I'm going to have the heart to undress her out of these clothes because I think they suit her so well. I love how her hair turned out as well. I haven't done a pixie cut on a femme doll before, and I think it suits this design really well. I'm super happy with her. A special thank you again to all of my Patreons with an extra double super special thank you to Jade. Thank you so much. You're awesome. Thank you always for your support. If you're interested in becoming a patron, check the description box for the link below. Don't forget to check out this dress pattern on Etsy or my 3D printed fuller boobs pieces that you can also buy on Etsy. thanks again for all of your support. It really means the world to me. I can't express how much your support honestly means to me. And fingers crossed, I will see you for a video next month. I can't believe I've done 3 months of 3 dolls. This is consistency from inconsistently. Catch you all in the next one. Bye. So these are my 3 Frankies, kind of in order that I did them. I know she was supposed to be a model. She's got lots of marks on her face as well that look like glue. This dress wasn't on my Etsy for a bit, it's back up. And of course this one is from today's video, so I really just wanted to look mostly at their faces. This one, I think her hair needs recurling really. I was doing much bigger eyes at this point, and some of that paint's a little bit chunky on her sclera there. Yeah, still didn't know what to do with eyes. Eyebrows I mean. I do really like the sparkle. This one's smaller on the eyes, but I've got quite a lot on waterlines. She's got glue on her face, I think. I don't know how that happened. This is a wig, it could have happened then. At the time I didn't think you could reroute after. She could do with her hair redoing. This is like oofy poofy, floofy, way too big. And I did try and give it a brush. Yeah, she maybe got dunked in something. Whoops. I think across all their lips you can kind of see she's the in-between. And these eyes, like the colour I did their irises are quite similar. But the blushing that I tend to do there I didn't do on this doll, which is, I don't know if that's going to stay part of my style. Yeah, just interesting to look at. What do you think? Much less on the eyelashes here. The brows I tried pretty hard on. White is difficult. I'm not even going to show you hers. And then these are the brows before. Yeah, so I'm interested to hear what you think. Let's try and give you a face up close up. What do you think?